Hey everyone, it's good to see you, and thanks for joining this session on how to make infographics for learning. If you are here live, then it's good to see you. We've gotten to do a little checking in before we started the recording. If you're catching this in a video replay, then I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us. And we're going to be talking all about how we can make these infographics for learning, the kind of stuff that your students can use to demonstrate understanding, to be able to show what they know. But it's the kind of stuff that we can make too if we want to simplify things, make our materials more visual, that kind of thing. I love talking about infographics. There's something that I like to make myself. I do a lot of infographics, and I love to be able to share some of the things that I've learned along the way. And I really think that PowerPoint is a fantastic tool to be able to make them. It's got some really great features that work really well, but there are lots of other tools that we can use to make these infographics. And so no matter what you're using, there's a lot that we can do with them, and that's really what this session is going to be all about. I did want to let you know real fast that this presentation is part of the Global Edtech Academy. I'm going to try to put the home screen of that up super fast here. The Global Edtech Academy, which is a partnership between Q and Microsoft. Easiest way to find it is to go to q.org/Microsoft. That's cue.org/Microsoft. I'm going to put that in the chat. I can't spell it. I'm going to try that one more time. cue.org/Microsoft. There we go. So I'm guessing if you're here live, then you probably have found this session by going to the site. But in case you're not super familiar with it, the Global EdTech Academy does have lots of great live sessions happening just about every day on a variety of different topics. Lots of great topics as we try to wrap our brains around remote learning, or even if we're coming back to face-to-face learning or a hybrid of both. There's lots of stuff that is a great fit for that. And you'll notice on the screen, you can click on the schedule button and you can scroll down through and you can see all of the schedules that are available. And if you haven't tried this already, you can sort by specific speakers. You can sort by the Microsoft tools that they're presenting on and the different PD types, the master classes, which are like 3 sessions on a specific topic. Office hours, we get to just chat with somebody and get your questions answered. And then you've got the sessions, which are the 1-hour sessions, kind of like this one that we're in right now. And so, and if you're curious about what I'm going to be presenting, I've got, let's see, today is how to make infographics for learning. I have office hours scheduled right after this that I have to cancel, so I won't be able to be in those. But on August 4th, I'm going to be talking about class-to-class collaborations, how you can get your class connected with other classes, featuring Skype and Flipgrid. And then there's also some more good Skype stuff the next day with problem solving with Mystery Skype, and then virtual field trips and guests. So that's kind of like a whole topic all on using video calls in the classroom. And those are coming up August 4th, 5th, and 6th if you want to watch those. So, okay. But enough about that. Let's get into our session today. And so the big thing that I want to get across, this is because I've been doing a handful of these sessions on PowerPoint recently. And this is kind of the big deal, I think, is that PowerPoint is really for more than just presentations. I think a lot of times, forgive me if you've been in one of my PowerPoint sessions and you've heard this little spiel, but I'm going to give it the short version of it again anyway. I think a lot of times we think of PowerPoint as a tool that we can use to do oral presentations in front of the class. The speaker, whether it's a student or a teacher, puts slides up on the screen, they advance through the slides, and they're supposed to be visual aids to help us give a presentation to our students or to a staff or something like that. But the truth is that PowerPoint is a really powerful design tool that you can use to create lots of really cool learning experiences for your students. And it doesn't just have to be, oral presentations where you flip through slides. And I think infographics, making infographics, this is a really prime example of this. I like to joke, but I think that there's some truth to this. I like to joke that infographics are my love language. Because whenever I have an idea to get across, a lot of times I like to put those images and text, those visuals and the text together, and to be able to get those out to people. So, and really one of the reasons that I think infographics are so powerful is because of those images and that text all together. It's very brain friendly, actually. There is cognitive science that backs this up. I want to point, for example, to this thing called dual coding theory. And dual coding theory says that the way we process images in our brains is different than the way that we process text in our brains. And so if our brain processes both of those differently, then we're encoding that learning in two different ways in our brains when we do it through images and through text. So whenever we can blend images and text together in our learning, that's kind of like double powerful when it comes to saving things in our long-term memory. So that's one of the reasons that I'm so I'm so sold on doing infographics, because they are very much that whole images and text, that whole powerful dual coding theory type of learning, And so actually, if you go back to the replay videos in the Global Edtech Academy, so if you go to q.org/Microsoft and you click on the session videos, I've done several presentations this summer about using PowerPoint to do this very visual learning. So you can always go back and rewatch one of those if you're interested in learning more. But in this session, we're going to be talking about infographics. I'm going to get back to those other slides in a second. So these are some examples of infographics that I've pulled together to help me make sense of things, and then also to help other people make sense of things. So for instance, this one over here on the left, this one is about the Madeleine Hunter lesson plan template. Do any of you remember this? The Madeleine Hunter lesson plan template was like a big deal in teacher prep programs years ago. Sometimes when teachers see the Madeleine Hunter lesson plan, Debbie's like, yep, I remember this. The Madeleine Hunter lesson plan template was something that used to make teacher candidates groan, because they were asked to write lesson plans using this template, and they were big and detailed, and they took a lot of time. I went to a conference a couple of years ago. And Deb says, I used your template to present at Bold. That's actually the conference I was just getting ready to talk about. That's so funny. Yeah, and Sarah says we're still required to do this, still required to do the Madeleine Hunter lesson plans. So I went to this conference called Q Bold. You can see the graphic right over here in my infographic. Bold is a conference called Blended and Online Lesson Design, and it's talking about how we can use your technology to design really cool lessons. And we use the Madeleine Hunter lesson plan template as a way to kind of like remix activities and lessons using technology. I didn't know about the Madeleine Hunter lesson plan template. So I thought, hey, as I learn, what if I create an infographic about it? And so that's really what I did here. Was I put a whole bunch of numbers. A lot of my infographics end up being numbered, and a little bit of text, and then a little icon to anchor each one. And so that's what I did with this one up here in the top right. This was about doing video calls in the classroom. So it was kind of like step by step, how does that work? And then I did this one right here on a blog post. My book publisher, Dave Burgess, who wrote the book Teach Like a Pirate, did a fun blog post about lessons from street performers that you can use in the classroom. And so I pulled a whole bunch of visuals together about that. And I'll even do it for, kind of take these up to the next level, and I'll recreate, like this one's about Microsoft Teams. So I took the user experience of Microsoft Teams and put it into what I call like a skin or a frame for my infographics. And then I'll put a whole bunch of little icons and text in for that. So it looks kind of like that. And then this one recreates Teams too, and it talks about channels and apps and tabs and how you can use all of those. By the way, if you're interested in seeing any of that stuff about Teams, let me put my link in here, ditchthattextbook.com/ Microsoft-Teams is where all of those infographics live. That's like a great big mega post that I have about how to use Microsoft Teams in the classroom, if you want to check that out. So those kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And so what I want to do in this session is a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to show you some of the tips and tricks that I use to be able to create infographics. We're going to actually sort of create one a little bit all together. And then I also want to show you a template that I have where if you want students to create infographics to demonstrate learning, what you can do is you can grab that template and you can assign it out to your students. And it has a lot of the pieces for the infographics already built into it. So a couple things here. And also, I think I forgot to mention this earlier, but in these sessions, I love watching the chat. And so if you have any observations or ideas, drop them in the chat. If you see something and you're like, oh, I tried that once, tell us about it in the chat and I will shout it out to everybody else because I love, you know, sharing what you all are doing. I feel like whenever we get into one of these webinars, if there's a bunch of us in here, let's make the most of all of the experiences and all of the ideas that we all have together. If you have questions, please definitely drop those in the chat and I will address those. Like, I mean, you already saw when we were talking about Madeleine Hunter lesson plan, some of you were dropping little comments in and I shouted each one of those out. So let's make this a conversation so that everybody can benefit from it. Okay, so let's start off with a blank PowerPoint presentation. Now, let me tell you real fast, the reason that I like using PowerPoint to make infographics, because PowerPoint wasn't really made to make infographics. But one of the reasons I like it is that it is it's a simple platform for designing these that people are probably pretty familiar with. Like we've probably used slide design tools for a while. So why go learn a brand new tool if we can just repurpose one that we're already familiar with? And PowerPoint is great because it has all of these elements. Whenever you click the insert menu, it has all of these elements that we could potentially add to our infographics, which is fantastic. Jody already dropped in and said, I could see students using sketchnoting as a step toward an infographic. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's a really good point, Jody. I'm glad you brought that out. And actually, the timing of that was perfect because we're just getting started with the infographic. We're just getting started making one together. And one of the things that I almost do second nature now because I've made a lot of them is envision what they're going to look like. And I'm so glad Jody mentioned this because if you can get students to just grab a sheet of paper and a pencil, oh my goodness, this is a tech presenter holding up a pencil and a piece of paper. Can you believe this? Isn't this like heresy that I'm going old school and talking about pencil and paper? But if they take this and they like sketch out, okay, here's where the title's going to go so that they've got that. And then they go, 1 is going to go here, 2 is going to go here, 3 is going to go here. And they start kind of putting those in. And then they go, and I want to make sure that I explain this one important concept. So it's going to go in this little box over here. And we'll put number 4 here and number 5 here and number 6 here. See, that is so much easier to me than trying to put it on the screen and moving it around. Well, I could see that as an easier way for somebody who hasn't done a whole bunch of these. Again, like I said, for me, I've done so many of these, I can kind of like imagine in my mind what they're going to look like. But yeah, definitely putting them on a sheet of paper could be huge. Paper and pencil, Jody says. So scary. I know, right? And Sue says in the design word, this is called prototyping. And that is exactly what we're talking about here is what if we can plan this thing out on a piece of paper and then, you know, that's the prototype. And then we start putting prototype into action. And of course, what we've got to do is we've got to adjust that prototype as we put it onto the screen. And so it'll end up looking very different. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing. Okay, let's get back on the screen for just a second. Now, one thing I will mention also about making infographics with PowerPoint is that when we make them, we are probably never going to hit the present button. We're basically using this as like, this is a sheet of paper. And we're gonna design this infographic in that way. Sometimes whenever I create stuff on PowerPoint, I'll have people ask, when do you hit present? Or I hit present and now my students can't move things around anymore. The idea here is to create something cool inside the slide, and we may never have to hit that present button to go full screen like this. Okay, so I just thought I'd mention that. Okay, so let's get started. And one of the things that I really like whenever I make infographics, in fact, if we go back to this one, you'll see I like to make numbered infographics. That's just kind of me, so like this one is 15 new remote learning updates for Microsoft Teams. And so, I just like putting a number and an icon and a little bit of text all together. And I find that that's an easy way to create one of these. And so let's kind of start off with that. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm curious to see, what do you think, and drop this in the chat if you can think of anything, what do you think students could create a numbered infographic on? Like if we wanted to use an infographic to demonstrate what they know, what is something that they could use? Marie already dropped in history timeline. Steps of a math problem, Debbie says. Man, you guys are on it already. This is great. Yeah, any of that stuff. Solving multi-step equations, says Dana. Maria says life cycle. Yep. Any of that stuff. Keep dropping those in. Storyboard, Marie says. Yeah, any of this stuff could totally work. Sequence of a novel, Clara says. Sarah says important people in the community, like a kinder skill. Yeah, that's fantastic. In fact, if you wanted to have your kinders do something like this, I'm going to share with you that template I was telling you about earlier, which basically makes creating an infographic a drag and drop process, which would be really good for kinders. Order of operations, says Dana. Joseph says chemical reaction steps. Oh, Joseph's back. He was in my session yesterday. Good to see you again. So yeah, all of these are fantastic. So let's watch on the screen real quick how we could recreate something that looks kind of like this one. So I'm going to start off with the shapes. The shapes are an important part of infographics, at least for me. And so I'm going to click on shapes and I'm going to grab a circle. Now this one says oval, but you can draw it in as a circle. Now you'll notice over here on the infographic that I had, all of the numbers are circles, right? So to draw in a circle, by the way, have you ever tried to draw in a shape like this and you can't quite perfectly get it to be a perfect circle? Like that's close, but not quite. Did you know that if you hold in the shift key, I just did it. See, watch this. I'm still clicking and dragging to draw this shape. If I push in the shift key right now, it snaps it to become a perfect circle. And then when I let go of my mouse or I let go of my touchpad, now it puts it in as a perfect circle. That's just a little tip that somebody may not have ever told you about. So if you want to make a perfect square, perfect circle, perfect equilateral triangle, any of those works whenever you're drawing in a shape. Okay, so we've got our circle here. Now, one of the things that I like to play with is the outline of the circle and the fill color of the circle. So if I look at shape outline here, notice that I can change the color of the outline. Right now, my shape is blue. So let's say I want to make the fill color like a darker version of blue. That's kind of what I've done over here in this one. Let me zoom in on that just a little bit. That's a little bit too much. There we go. Do you notice how on this, the outline is a little darker? I'm going to show you how to do that. So I changed the shape outline to be a darker blue, and you can only just barely see it until I change the weight of that outline. And so now it gets like wider, wider, wider. Let's see if there's any more than that. Can I specify the width? Oh yeah, check this out. I can make it like as big as I want. Let's make it a 12.1. I like these great big wide outlines for some reason. That's just kind of my jam. Okay, so we drew in a circle shape here. And of course you could do this with rectangles to make a square, or you could do it with really whatever if you want. The other thing that's important to know about these shapes is that if you double click on them, it puts a text box in the middle. So if I want to make that number 1, I'm going to take that, I'm going to leave that as white. And I'm going to make my text bigger. What I just did, by the way, I'm going to throw these little tips in just every once in a while. If you hold in Control, Shift, and the period key. So if I hold in Control and Shift and I push the period key, that is the keyboard shortcut that you use to make text bigger. See, for me, I very rarely go and click on the font size anymore to change the size of it. I use that keyboard shortcut all the time. It's, again, Control, Shift, period to make it bigger, and Control, Shift, comma to make it smaller. So the way to remember that is if you can remember Control and Shift, if you look at your period and comma keys, look what's right above them on the keyboard. It's the greater than and less than sign, right? And so that's the way for you to remember that you make it bigger with period and comma makes it smaller. So that's an easy way to make that fit. Okay, so now we've got this this one sort of circle that we can use as a number. And so let's imagine then in this one we're going to make something that is that has 8 items on it. So what I would do is I would make one just the way that I want it, and then we're going to duplicate it over and over and over again to save ourselves some time. So the way that I would do it is I would make this number just like we saw here, and then I would start to insert some icons. Now there's a couple of ways that you can insert these icons, and I love icons because there's a million of them all over the place. And because you can use them to very quickly add a visual. Remember I was talking about dual coding theory earlier, where if we can add some images and text, some visuals and text together, it makes it stickier in the brain. This is an easy way to get a visual in. Now, one place that I like to go, if you're using PowerPoint, this isn't the first place that I would go, but I definitely want to demonstrate it for you. One place that I like to go is the Noun Project. I'm going to drop the link to this in the chat if you want to go check it out, the Noun Project. So this site says over 2 million curated icons created by a global community. And so they have all of these icons out there. And what's neat is that you can go search for an icon. I'll tell you what, when I use icons, I use a light bulb icon more than probably anything. And so what's neat about the Noun Project is that you can go find these icons. You can find one that you like, and then you have to create a Noun Project account, but they have a free version of it. And within that free version, you can download their icons as long as you put attribution to the artist who created them. And so you can go download their icons and you can go use them. And then, like, for instance, let me show you an example of what that might look like. Like you can see right down here in, I'm going to delete these out real quick. You can see in this infographic that I just put some text down here at the bottom that gives credit. So if you want to use icons from that website, from the Noun Project, all you've got to do is just put a little text box down at the bottom that gives credit to the artist, and you can use pretty much all of their icons on that entire site for free, which is pretty cool. So that's one place that you can get icons. Now, the next thing I want to show you, the next place that you can use to get icons, this is my favorite one if you're working within PowerPoint. See, PowerPoint has this huge library of icons already built into it. Now, I should mention that the version of PowerPoint that I'm using, this is the desktop version. And with PowerPoint, there's a desktop version. This is like the software program that you install in your computer and use. There's also an online version that you can run through a browser. The online version looks a little different than this one does. And then you've also got the mobile apps too. But whenever possible, I like to use the desktop version of PowerPoint because it has the best features. So anyway, let's say that I want to find a, let's say we're doing an infographic about our day. You know, like what does a typical day in our life look like? I'm going to pick this little alarm clock right here. And I'm going to insert that in. Now I pull it over here. Now notice that the alarm clock is black. And my color scheme that I've got over here is blue. So maybe what I do here is I click on this alarm clock, and over here where it says graphics format and you have the fill color, what if I pick a blue color that kind of matches? And see, now it's all kind of the same color. Now check this out. I'm going to insert a text box. Stick a little text box down below. Say, most days I wake up between 7 o'clock and 7:30 a.m. Which is true for me these days in the summer with my kids and my wife all at home when school's not going on. Like the sun comes up and it's like 7 or 7:30, no matter what, that just seems to happen. Okay, so we create one of these. And so now this is kind of like the basic unit, like the basic block of the infographic that we're going to base the whole thing off of. And so whenever I use this, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this and highlight all three parts of it. And I'm going to use the Control-D keyboard shortcut. And the Control-D keyboard shortcut duplicates. And you notice that I just duplicated all three of those pieces. I'm going to stick them in like this. And then watch this. I'm going to highlight them all again. And I'm going to duplicate it again. Do you see how my infographic is starting to come together? I want to make sure that everything is pretty well spaced out the same all the way across. Now that I know that there's going to be 8 of them, and I know that there's a row of 4, I'm going to kind of center this on the page. And then I'm going to take all of those and I'm going to duplicate it again and move it down below. And so see, check it out. Now, most of the work for my infographic is already done, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to 2. I'm going to continue to change the numbers all the way across. There's 4, there's 5, there's 6, 7, and 8. And then all I've got to do now is I just go through and I change my text and I change my images. And so I come over here to icons. And what I can do, I think, is I can right click and I can, let's see if it change graphic from icons. Perfect. Okay, so what do I do next? Let's say I eat breakfast. Search for breakfast, search for eggs, search for bacon, search for cereal. I got to spell it right first. Oh, let's search for a plate. Okay, that'll work, because this is what I look like when I eat breakfast, right? Like balance or spinning a bunch of plates. I don't think so, but I'll take that plate and I'll insert it. After I wake up, I eat breakfast, period. And then I continue to do this all throughout. I come over here and I click on this icon. I can right click it and I can change the graphic to switch to a different one. And I just continue, like I can pick this laptop right here, insert it in. After breakfast, I start working on my computer, which is pretty much the way my life goes. And so now you can see that all you've got to do really is just take this sort of framework that you have and change the graphics and change the text. And so if I continue to do that, change the graphic, change the text, change the graphic, change the text, change the graphic, change the text over and over and over and over again, I'll have a full 8-step infographic. And now the only thing I think that is missing is to add a headline or a title. So let's insert a little text box in here. And let's say my normal day. We're going to use that same keyboard shortcut, Control Shift period period period, to make it bigger. We'll use a different font. Yep, that one will work. And then we're going to, let's just make a new icon. And we're going to change this one to a different icon. And we're going to make this like a sun or something like that. And then we add that sun in, boom. We can make this a little bit bigger. And now we have a headline that we can put for both of them. Kind of like, I wish I could just move them over. There we go. Okay, and now our infographic is done. And so, Maria just wrote duplicating. Thank you for all the little tidbits of info that save so much time. I tell you what, duplicating, I use that Control-D keyboard shortcut all the time. And let me tell you also, and let's see, what you can also do, of course, anything that's on the screen, use Control-D to duplicate. But watch this, what you can also do is Control-D and duplicate your slides too, right? So what I like to do, and see, I do this in my PowerPoint presentations all the time. For instance, when I was just making this one to prepare for this this presentation, all I did was I put my, let's see if I can get, yeah, there are all my infographics again. I put all of my infographics onto the screen kind of like this. And then what I did to add the next slide was I just duplicated that slide, which would leave all of my stuff down here at the bottom. Now I know you can put this on a master slide, but sometimes I don't. And so I'm using the Shift key here to highlight 3 different things, delete, and then now I can put something else on there. And so using that duplicate feature, that is like one of the power moves, I think, when it comes to PowerPoint. It's a PowerPoint power move. See what I just did there? So let's see. Oh my goodness, forgive me that I can't pronounce your name. If you can put it in the chat if I mispronounce it. It looks like Marja or Marija says the noun project is a PowerPoint add-in, and you can have it as a small window on the right and take icons directly without leaving the presentation and going to their site. This is fantastic. I don't know why I didn't think of this. It's probably because I didn't know about it. So thank you for suggesting that. So if you use that as an add-in, as a PowerPoint add-in, then you're able to pull those noun project icons over. I'm going to go do that right after I'm done with this session. That's fantastic. So thank you for suggesting that. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. Because I tell you what, the icons make this whole infographic thing just fantastic. Okay, you can kind of see how that one works. And what's neat about this, by the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this infographic template that we just made together. I'm going to save this to OneDrive, and I'm going to drop a link to it into the chat. So if you want to come in and grab my, I'm going to set it so that you can't edit it, but you can download it or save your own copy of it. Okay, so anyone with the link can view. I'm going to copy that link. And so now I'm going to put that into the chat. And what's neat is that if you can grab a little template like this, or even if you make a little template like this yourself, assign that thing out to your students. And then your students, all they have to do is just do exactly what you saw on the screen. Change the icon, change the text, and boom, they have an 8-step infographic that they can just modify and use. So there's that. If you want to go grab it and then just save a copy of it, then you should be in good shape. Okay, so I wanted to talk about one other kind of infographic that you can make, and that is a picture-based infographic. Now, there's a ton of different ones that we can do when it comes to this, but I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to insert a picture. I'm going to go online and look for it, and we're going to look for something like look for the digestive system. Okay, and I'm looking for a digestive system that is not labeled. So I could use something like this and insert it into my slide. Oh, and Marija, again, sorry, says you can also recolor the icons from both from the ones from PowerPoint and from the Noun project. So you saw what I was doing here where I was recoloring. This is exactly what she's talking about. You can recolor your icons. And so, you know, what that means is you click on it and you click the graphics format up here and you can change the fill color of it and change it to a different color if you want to. And if you pull in, see, I'm learning so much right here already. If you pull in icons from the Noun project and stick them in there, you can use PowerPoint to change the colors of them, which is pretty cool. Okay, so let's say we take an image kind of like this, or maybe we've got a picture. You know what? I'm going to use a different one. I'm going to use a picture of a map. I'm going to use a map of Sydney, Australia. And so let's use one kind of like, let's see, which one do I want to use? I'm going to use this one right here. And so we insert that map. And so we notice there's the map right there. Now I'm going to go borrow. I'm going to go borrow some numbers from this one. So I'm going to just come over here and copy this number and bring it over and paste it. Oh, we got a question in the chat. Marie asks, to change the shape from an oval to a circle, what button did you use? Okay, so whenever I go to insert the shapes, I picked the oval and then I just drew it on. And what I was telling you about was if I want to make it a perfect circle, one thing I can do is hold in the shift key while I'm drawing it in. And so that's what I use to make that circle instead of like an oval that looks like this. Is I just use the shift key to keep it as a perfect circle. Notice whenever I let go of the shift key, now it's more like an oval, right? All right, so yeah, that's how I do this. Oh, Debbie even mentioned, she said this will be super helpful too when making hyperdocs. Yeah, if you know about hyperdocs, by the way, I'm just going to give you the website to hyperdocs. If you want to go check it out, hyperdocs are these really neat student-centered learning activities. It's where you can put kind of like an entire lesson all in one place, and it gets students creating. And this would be, yeah, fantastic for making graphics for hyperdocs or having students make them too. Okay, so we just borrowed this little number from another one of these, right? What if you take this, and I'm going to shrink it down just a little bit. I'm going to make my text a little bit smaller too. What if we take this number and we drop it into different parts of the map? And so we could drop the number 1 right there. Again, I'm going to use my Control D to duplicate. Now what happens if we take that number and we put it over here? Let's take our number and our map. I'm going to hold in Shift and click on the map here so that I can move all of this over. And notice now we have the map here, and then we have some space over here for the number 1. Insert a text box, and we have, here is a spot for some text. So I'm going to do that so that you can see that we have 2 lines of text right here for this particular one. And so then there's that. And now what I can do, notice I clicked on my number and I clicked on my text with the Shift key held in to highlight both of them. Here we go again. Control D to duplicate. Let's see, I don't think that's totally lined up. It's pretty close though. I'm going to highlight all of that. Control D to duplicate. Do you see where I'm going with this? This is another kind of infographic that you and your students can create. So my alignment isn't perfect, but it's close. Control D to duplicate, and now we have 8 things on the screen right here. Again, duplicate is your best friend, or it can be your best friend. And so then what do we do here? We're going to change all of our numbers to 2, to 3, to 4, 5, 6, not 67 though, 7, and 8. And now what can we do? I'm going to duplicate this number. This is number 2 on the map. This is number 3 on the map. And so now what could we do with something like this? If we had an image and students could put the numbers on it, and then they could put text out to describe it, We could totally use this for a map, couldn't we? Because you're seeing an example of it right here. I almost put the digestive system in there. Anything that has a system or a cycle or something, if you can find a graphic, you could do one of these, couldn't you? What else could we potentially use these for? Curious to see in the chat if you've got any ideas on how this could work. But if you have something like a map or a diagram, you could even do an image, you know, like a photo, kind of like a current events photo, or a photo of, you know, of something that happened in the past. I'll give you another example. I'm going to delete this and I'm going to insert another picture. This is from online pictures, and I'm going to search for, I'm going to take a chance. This is Tres de, here it is. Okay, so Tres de Mayo is a painting by Francisco Goya. I used to teach about this when I was teaching Spanish, about the Spanish Civil War. And so imagine if you just got done teaching about this. Watch this, I'm going to right click it. Did you notice that my picture came in on top of all of my little dots? I'm going to right click this and I'm going to send it to the back so all the dots come up. There is a lot going on in this painting, and part of what we would do when we learned about this is we would identify the different things that were in this painting. And so you could obviously move your dot to different places here, different parts of the painting, and you could identify what those different things were. And then what do? We find number 1 and we type about what number 1 is. We find number 2 and we type about what number 2 is. Yet another type of infographic that you could create, right? Joseph just said, Matt, this is awesome for developing size and distance concepts in the solar system. Yeah, I love that. This would be a fantastic way to do that too. Marie just said, HyperDocs and PowerPoint online looks super cool. I can't share a photo here, but I'll tweet it. Awesome. Yes, definitely. And then Jody said students could insert several of their own pictures, collage style, and then number and comment on the meaning of each one or how it demonstrates concept. That would be fantastic. And of course, there's lots of ways to take your own pictures. You know, for instance, I'm working off of a Windows laptop right now. If you're using a Windows laptop, you can just open up the camera app. This is the camera that's on the back of my device, not on the front of my device. But you could have students take their own picture with the camera app like this and just insert it in. You know, there's a variety of ways that they could do that. So, all right. So yeah, you can see, I mean, just right here on the screen, we've put together a handful of different kinds of infographics that you can use that are the numbered variety. Marie says you could put out a sheet, assign numbers, and have students collaborate on that project. Yeah, so you could have students, you know, each student gets a number or gets a couple of numbers, and then they drop it onto the picture and then they fill things in. That's another way you could totally do this. This is fantastic. And oh man, the stuff that you guys are coming up with in the comments, this is totally making this section. This is great. Okay, so I wanted to share with you real quick before we finish this. I wanted to share with you a couple of things. Oh, Jody says I'm taking a Nat Geo, National Geographic storytelling with photography course right now. So my brain is there, but personal made photos are more powerful. Oh yeah, and it just sort of depends on what you're doing, right? Like if you're talking about this storytelling with photography course, I could see both of those working together real nicely in infographics. Okay, so I wanted to share something with you real quick. On my screen, I've got a link that I'm going to drop into the chat real quick. PowerPoint-templates. So if you go to this page, and I'm going to show it to you on the screen here in just a second, ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. I have a ton of these free PowerPoint templates that you can download and use with your students, pre-created ones. And one of my favorite ones on there just happens to be a template about making infographics. So by the way, if you go to that page, which I just dropped into the chat, ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. If you go to that page and you scroll and you scroll and you scroll, first of all, you will find that there are dozens of these templates that I've made that I put out there. Guess how much these cost? Nothing. They are totally free. Okay, so forgive me if you've heard this spiel on a previous session, but I've made a whole bunch of these templates, and I know that sometimes people put them on Teachers Pay Teachers and they charge a couple of bucks for them or something. I'm not going to nickel and dime you guys for these. I just want to put them out here in this PowerPoint templates library so that you can download them for free. So these are all totally for free. And so you can scroll through and see some of the cool ones. And you'll also see that each one has a blog post. So if you want to figure out how to use them, you can read the original blog post to do that. But if you scroll for a little bit, you'll see these. These are my, I call them icon boards. They're kind of like Infographics templates. And so what you can do with these is you download any one of these as a PowerPoint file, and then you can assign them to your students. So check this one out. Usually I pull up the great big icon board whenever I do this. This time I want to use the, I'm going to use the art gallery one. And so you'll notice that it's downloading. Part of the reason I want to use the art gallery one is because it has a whole bunch of icons available in it. So here's the idea behind this. If you want students to create infographics and you want them to be able to do it kind of quickly and easily, you can use one of these templates. And so we can enable editing on this. And so here's the deal with these templates. I have taken a whole bunch of things that I think would be useful to students to create an infographic, and I've sprinkled them along the outside. Sprinkled it along the outside of the slide. And see, I put a gallery of ideas so that you can put like 4 different little galleries. I'm actually going to delete that part off. Although you could totally keep that. And so check this out. We've got all of these icons, and what we can do is we can click on one and drag it over. Or what might be better, remember, what is the favorite keyboard shortcut of this entire session today? Control D for duplicate. If you're using a Mac, it's Command D, by the way. And so that way you can keep your original library of icons over. We take one of the numbers, Control D to duplicate, drag it over, insert a text box, and then we type in learning is the reward, just like a trophy. Okay, so now we've got a little text box in there, and we just move it over. And look at this. See, now what we've got is we've got an infographic that's drag and drop. And now we do those same tricks that we did before. We can duplicate, and all we have to do is just change the icon. See, think about this. Is this the kind of thing that you think your students could do? Is to go in and make one of these infographics to demonstrate what they know, and then just drag stuff into place. That's really why I made these. So, oh, Anita mentioned something a couple minutes ago in the comments. Oh, this is good. I've got to figure out a way to do this. She says you should have a place in your website where people can upload their edited editions, pass it forward. Oh, I love that. Actually, I think it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think on this one, the math icon board, yeah, the math icon board was one that I didn't make. This was created by Kimberly Wasmuth and shared on her blog, and then she just mentioned it to me, and I threw it into the template gallery with her permission. So maybe I just need to call out the fact that people could do that, and I'll add them to the library. That's a great idea. I love that. So anyway, the neat thing about these templates is that what you can do with them is this. Let me put this slide up here real quick. You can grab one of those infographics templates that I already created. And so you create one of those templates. And then no matter what your learning management system is, you can assign it to your students. Now, the example that I have down here is an example taken, this is a little screenshot taken from Microsoft Teams. So if you use Microsoft Teams, what you can do is you attach that template. This is like the template that we were just using a minute ago, the drag and drop template. Just attach that PowerPoint file to your assignment. So if you're creating an assignment in Microsoft Teams or in another learning management system, you just attach that file. And usually next to the attachments, there's a little button like this that allows you to choose students edit their own copy. That just makes a copy of it for the students. So they have their own copy. Think of it like taking it to the digital photocopier. Students get their own copy of it, and so then they're able to work on their own. And then whenever they're done, see, the students work on it and then they submit it back to you. And then you have all the students' little infographics that you can go grade and you can put feedback on and that kind of thing. So really that's kind of what we're working on here is a way to take that template, assign it out to students through the learning management system, and then students can work on that template. So make their own infographics and then submit them back to you. Pretty cool, right? All right. So we're starting to wrap, get to the end of this. I'm curious to see in the chat, what have been sort of your big takeaways from this session? What are some ways that you think you could use any of this? Making infographics from scratch, maybe making them for your students, having your students make them, creating a template, using one of the templates that I made. Like, what do you think you could potentially use when it comes to all of this? I'm curious to see that in the chat. So as you're doing that, I wanted to mention real quick, here's that PowerPoint templates link one more time. And I also wanted to show you this. So this is if you want to sign up for my email newsletter, which comes out once a week with practical ideas just like the ones that you saw in this session. And then you also get these 3 free ebooks, which includes a bunch of copy and assign templates you can give your students and a bunch of practical ideas. So ditch that textbook.com/101 to get signed up for that. So I wanted to drop that in the chat real quick. Okay, takeaways. Dana says concept maps or problem solving maps in math. I love that. Sarah says, I'm going to use these in Seesaw instead of purchasing templates on TPT. This is huge. Oh my goodness. That just made my day right there. If we can keep you away from spending your money on TPT. Anita says, I will not reinvent the wheel. Maria said, Debbie says plot, which I assume is like using something like this for the plot of a book. Maria says having students create infographics of their own as a great way to get to know them at the beginning of the year. That's cool. I think that's awesome. Imagine like a top 10 things to know about me infographic. Is it Nolan said, thinking of faculty and staff procedures for back to school. Fun story retell in Spanish 1, Spanish 2 classes. Yes, absolutely. I love that. And Sue says, I think a rearrange activity. Put all of the elements of a math solution on the side and then they have to rearrange. Yes, because what were we doing in that infographics template? We were dragging things into place. That totally works. Claire says I can make my own templates for class and have students make them to sequence events in history and ELA. Yes. So yeah, this is really, really good stuff. So fantastic. So I'm looking through on this. Oh, Nelon. Okay, very good. Thank you for changing my pronunciation there. That's perfect. So, all right, wonderful. This has been fantastic, and you all have thrown in some really, really good ideas too. So, so I'm going to stay in the chat for just a moment after we wrap this up in case you have other questions or want to share some other ideas. But that pretty much wraps us up here. So again, q.org/Microsoft. That's cue.org/Microsoft for more sessions. I've got more of them coming up in August, and that's where you can go find all of the video replays too if you want to check those out. So again, like I said, I'm going to wrap this up, stop the recording, and hope that I get to see you in another future webinar because, man, you all were bringing it today. It was fantastic. So thank you for that, and I hope that you take care and enjoy the rest of your summer, and hopefully I'll get to see you on another webinar.